it's Laura with Following the Paper Trail, and it's What's Up Wednesday for Cinco de Mayo, the 5th of May. This isn't very Cinco de Mayo-esque, but you know how I'll drink a margarita later today in celebration. But anyway, what I have to show you today is some cool roses, and these are made out of metal. They're metal roses. They are made similar to the Tim Holtz ones on his 12 Tags of Christmas from 2009. A little bit different, don't cut parts out and all that sort of thing. And I know a lot of people have been making these roses, but these are made out of metal. Here is some more of them. I'll show you the whole frame here in a few minutes. But these are made out of metal. It's kind of like heavy foil. It's actually used for embossing, and it has a special name for the technique, and I'm sure somebody will let me know what that is. Empose or something like that, or I don't remember. But you can get this metal. I've had some for years, and I don't know whose this one is. But I've had this stuff for years because you can actually stitch through it, and I tried stitching on a quilt once with it. That was pretty fun. Kind of goes through a needle. But anyway, you can get this stuff like at Joann's or other craft stores for embossing. And it comes in a brass, it comes in copper, and it comes in aluminum. And I've been playing with the flowers in all three of that. This one's a brass one. Today I'll be making a copper one to show you, and I also did a aluminum one. The aluminum one didn't do much for me. I added some glitter to it, see if I could dress it up, but it just looks like it's made out of foil. Not my personal taste, but you know, you might like it. Anyway, to make this, you're going to need some sort of a die. You cannot use punches. The punches won't cut through this stuff. And I use the Tim Holtz Tattered Flowers, but you can use pretty much any kind of die as long as it'll cut through the metal. I know all of the Sizzix ones will cut through the metal, absolutely no problem. I did like 4 layers with it, went through it like butter. And I just used this smaller size one. If you wanted to make it bigger, you could add other sizes. I also use some of this for behind, and I'll show you that on the frame as well. But what you're going to need is to cut 3 of the little metal shapes. And then, because these petals aren't quite deep enough, I take my tonic scissors. These cut through the metal without any problem. These are also Tim Holtz. Don't you just love him? Comes up with such great stuff. And I'm just going to snip this in so it's closer to the center. And I'm going to do this on all 3 of the petals. Now, one thing to be aware of with this metal, and it's kind of like heavy duty, you know, aluminum foil like you use in your kitchen. It's like triple the thickness of like the heavy duty stuff, but it's easy to cut. It's not like the sheet metal that I've done some etching on for some of the minis that I showed you before. You don't need special snips, but the tonic scissors cut through it without any problem. So you're just gonna snip it closer to the center. Then the next step, one of the things, lost my train of thought, is you want to watch out for these edges, is they are sharp. So please be super careful when you're working with this so you don't cut your fingers. Now this is just, you know, a thin paintbrush, and I just use this to roll the edges, and then I kind of roll them back again. Because I don't want it, I just want it to roll the edges under without, I don't want to leave them really rolled. I just want to give them some curve. So you just roll it under and then kind of roll it back again. If that makes sense. So, and I'm going to real quick do that while I have this out. Do that with all of my petals. That's just to give them some shape. Now, when you're doing this out of paper or grunge paper or something like that, as Tim Holtz shows on his blog, you're cutting out sections of the petal. With the foil, you don't really need to do that because it's so pliable and bendable and all that good stuff that you don't really need to do that. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is where I want you to be really careful, because the next step, after I kind of fold those back out a little without munching that curve, is you're going to try to fold them in half and then just kind of help that curve kind of go back to itself. So stick your finger in the center and just curve them a little bit. Don't have to be too perfect, because, you know, nature's not perfect. Well, it is perfect, but it's perfect in its imperfection. So, okay, so then I folded all the petals. Then I'm going to take 3 of them and fold them towards the center. This is to make the center. And they kind of just, you want to just kind of fold them kind of around themselves. You might need to take your handle back in there, help some of them curl back again. But see how that kind of makes the center? Then I'm going to bring the other 3 petals up around it, kind of give it a little squeeze. And that makes the center of my rose. This could also just be a bud if you wanted to make a bud using one of these. I'm going to do the same thing with the other two. Just kind of fold them. Again, be super careful. I don't want anybody cutting themselves. And this one, I kind of put my thumb and fold them up a little bit, but give some space in the center for this to fit in. In fact, you might want to put that in the center and just kind of help fold them up around it. Again, you may need to help that curl come back on some of the petals. So with two of them, it makes that size. And then you can still do yet a third. Then what we're going to do, because if you know, at this point you can stick them together and pretty much be done with it. If you like the shiny middle. Now, I want them to look a little bit more aged and vintagey. Okay, so it kind of gets squished up around itself. And see, that makes that rose. Okay, so in order to make them be a little bit more vintage and not quite so shiny, you're going to take the three pieces. And then what I'm going to use, I'm going to put, this is a fire brick that you can get. Something that's non-flammable, because I'm going to be using a torch. Excuse me. This is a torch I use in my jewelry, but you can get this at like Bed Bath & Beyond or any kitchen supply place. It's a torch how they melt the top of like creme brulee. But it is one thing to be aware of. It is super uber duper hot. Your heat tool is not going to get hot enough to do this, but it's much hotter, much more flammable. So please be very cautious when you're using this. But what you're going to do is just heat these up in order to kind of give them an aged patina. Like this one's got that aged kind of look to it. With copper, copper's cool. Now this didn't want to stay on earlier today, so. Okay, so now it's not going to want to work. Okay. All right. So it's just like a mini torch. And you just heat it up. Now one thing what copper does is when you heat it, it gets kind of a rainbow effect. Isn't that cool? You get kind of that rainbow, and if you stop it right at the right time, it'll keep that rainbow. If you keep going, it just darkens up a little, but it kind of gives that aged patina. Okay. Turn my torch off, set it aside. Okay, now at this point, you're dying to touch them. You'll only ever do that once, trust me. You never want to do, you don't want to touch them because they're like mega super hot. They're like practically, you know, they will burn you. So you pick them up with a pair of tweezers and you just quench them in a cup of water. I have a cup of water just sitting right there. And they instantly cool when you quench them. If you do it right after you torch them, it goes, psh, it's really cool. But as soon as you've done torching them, if you quench them, you can touch them immediately. But see how that just gives it much more of a vintage look. And in the center, it's hard to see, but it's kind of got a little bit of pinks and stuff on the copper of that one. So I let them dry or try to dry them off as best I can. And then I just use glue dots to attach them all together. Quick and easy, super fast, super pretty. But what I did for Mother's Day is I have made, let me get this out of the way so I can get just further away from the camera, is I've taken an unfinished frame that I got just at the craft store, and I have painted it with distressed crackle paint and antique linen. I then used my favorite frayed burlap that I just rubbed it over it with my dauber to enhance the crackle, and then I sprayed it with Glimmer Mist in Wheatfield, one of my super favorites. And then what I've done here is I happen to have a holiday butterfly spray from Prima. Perfect colors. Absolutely perfect. Went with the brass and copper. And so what I did is I just hot glued that on. I have, excuse me, gotta tickle my throat. 3 copper flowers. This is one has just got 2 flowers to it, see, because you can also open them up a little bit if you want them a little bit more open, or close them up. I was off camera doing that where I was playing with opening it and closing it. So I've got 3 coppers and 1 brass, and then on this piece here, I just took them from the Tattered Angels die. I just did this big kind of daisy-like thing, and then I just kind of shaped those a little bit to get behind that. And then I just hot glued those on there. Makes for super pretty flowers. As I said, I also did it in the aluminum Didn't do as much for me. But, you know, if you mixed all the metals together, it might be kind of cool. But anyway, these are, because they are foil, you can kind of bend them and they're pliable. You know, they're not going to stay super hard. I'm going to play with what I can do, maybe embossing them or whatever. One of the other things that I played with too is you can use alcohol inks on them to add some color. It was just not fitting with what I was doing, but the alcohol inks, you can always color metal with that too. So if you don't want to do the torch thing, you can play with coloring them, maybe even before you start folding them up. But anyway, fun project to try with Mother's Day coming up. Maybe your mother is more the metal type, the heavy metal type, than she is the warm and fuzzy type. So, and here's my mom. That's my mom, my brother. That's me when I was just about a year and a half. So, so this is something I'm going to give my mom for Mother's Day. So anyway, have a great rest of your week.